What's going on? Well, I was a little judgmental, a little too quick to judge on the, Lexan dummy cowl. Um, and I've used these before and everything, but yeah, it worked out way easier than I even remember. I thought just cut once, don't cut twice, make it even faster because I hate fiberglass. But yeah, I was able to, and I'm sure it's a normal method too. I marked and drilled the two bolt holes um, on the cut in plastic cowl, backup cowl, dummy cowl. And then, yeah, from there, I just took that. So let's see how my one hand work is here. I'm sure this is the way everybody does it, and there's nothing to it. But yeah, from there, I took and I bolted them through. You can see that's about lined up. I bolted them through, and then I was able to mark and cut my cutouts, which took like 2 seconds. I just used a Dubro hobby scissors, because it's just easy Lexan. And then from there, like you guys just saw it on here, great camera work. I was able to line those two screws back up. I put the bolts through again, and that lined it up. And then I marked the holes. That just took a second. And then I cut those out. And since they already cut the exhaust cut out for you, which has a negative pressure lip, so that's already cut. So you know me, I'm just trying to eliminate any fiberglass stuff, so I'm pretty stoked that that's cut. And then these things just slide on. You see, I'm just doing that with one hand, no problem. And get those over the little catches there. There we go. And that's on, and yeah, that was very quick, very easy. One thing, yeah, and very little fiberglass dust because I didn't have to cut that out. So yeah, I was pretty stoked on that. I was kind of wrong to prejudge that. I was just gonna eyeball it, mark it real quick, cut it once, but this was super quick and easy. I'm sure you guys would do it the same way. There was nothing genius about that. And then the one thing I will say, like, this plane has been super easy to put together. Whether or not you're going to love the connectors. Can I see those connectors here? Yeah, you can more or less see those connectors for the ailerons and for the elevators, whether you want, like that standard RC connector with it stabbed through like that. Yeah, yet to be seen. I've been using a little ruler, a little flat, thin metal ruler to hold the tab back to take them off. Because I've seen where if you keep pushing those with your finger, I've broken those things off before, stuff like that. Similar ones, not these particular ones, but with that little flat ruler, might as well show you that. With that little flat ruler, which is very thin, I use this for a lot of stuff in here. You're going to focus? Yeah, so this thing's very thin, but rigid and flat. And I slide that down on that tab, so it only pulls it out enough to get the extension out and the connector out, the extension connector out, but it doesn't bend it very much, so hopefully that'll hold up. But that's a big sidetrack. Whether or not you love those, I mean, I definitely like and there's two per aileron on each side, so I definitely like the, I'm looking for some over here, the multiplex, single connector for the two ailerons, 8-pin, I like those definitely better. The way I have it, the standard kind of extreme flight way on my pink NG 104-inch extreme flight, it's really nice, because it's in the side of the fuselage, and so you just take it, it's hanging out, 5 inches or something out of the end of the wing, and you just plug that in the side of the fuselage and bolt on your wing, and you're like done. That's my favorite, so far. And then, but overall for voltage throughput, to the servos, maximum power to the servos, maximum security, maximum everything, the micro Deans, 4 pins where I use 3 pins and pull 1, this is still, to me, the best, your best power throughput and your strongest solid connection. Like I've even ejected wings and had the wings not fall off the plane because these steam connectors are holding them on. So those two are still my first choices. But if you get along with these, then my point being, since they have all the extensions installed for you and all labeled for you, and this connector setup for you if you choose to use it and you can get along with it, and this dummy cow and yada yada yada, this assembly is super easy. Of course, they're kind of all the Skywing Extreme Flight stuff is super easy anyway, but this is because Extreme Flight even has your control horns glued in for you now, but now we're hoping that goes good because the Skywing glue is starting to fail. So that's, now we're talking in circles to trying to get to one little point, which is this is the first thing I don't like very well. Kind of hard to see. I'll have to show you maybe with that ruler. But yeah, I can get my hand down here. You can see a big gap over here. I can get my hand under here. I got an even bigger gap here to get my hand down, and a pretty good sized gap on the bottom, and a big gap for my hand up above. So what I liked about Skywing before and over Extreme Flight was that they had pre-glued in foam, and it was really long. It was always way long, and you just mark, you put the cowl on and you'd see it was, pushing into the cylinder, and you'd mark it. You just take your hobby scissors and cut it back like 1/4 inch at a time, 1/8 inch at a time, whatever you had to do, and then it would be a nice seal on the cylinders, so I liked that a lot. This is pre-glued on and has some pretty healthy gaps around it, so yeah, you can kind of see there. Let's see, can you? It's really funny. What I'm looking at is so much different than what the camera is seeing. You can kind of see there, I focused on it, that there's just a lot of cylinder that's getting blocked because this whole thing's too far, where's my finger, too far over, and then a big airspace here. So you're not going to get that, where's my finger, there it is. You're not going to get that much cooling in here, on this end of the cylinder. And then here, you're not going to get as much cooling either because the wind will blow by. It'll take the path of least resistance. And here, the same thing. And just being short. So the Extreme Flight, what I didn't like, what I still don't like, I think they're all still the same, is it's composite like this, but it's kind of thinner. This is thick. So the Extreme Flight's better in that. But I didn't like I had to glue it on, was the whole thing, because I'm so lazy. Like I didn't want to glue it on. But they were deep, they were long, and they were very thin fiberglass. So you could take your hobby scissors and keep shaping it, and then the only thing was you had to glue it on. And I used to complain about that, like a minor complaint. I'm talking, I wasn't a major complaint or anything. Very minor, ticky-tack complaint that I used to do. But now that Skywing has changed, I prefer the Extreme Flight, and I still prefer the old foam deep, long running wild Skywings, but they've changed it. And it's very thick. I wouldn't want to cut. You couldn't cut this with hobby scissors. This was really thick stuff. But you were not going to have to because it's short. But you would have to you'd have to extend it, modify it, like glue some pieces on, to get this to be optimal. That's my word. That's my word this year. And I always liked my cooling on, I've always kind of done my baffle reel clean, so that the air has to go over the cylinder. It can't escape it and just be wasted. And then the negative air pressure dam, which is critical because if it's cavitating inside, that's not going to help you either. The way that most guys have their stuff set up, even if they have the baffles, is all the hot air is just cavitating on top of the cylinder and not getting out. And if they would run a negative air pressure dam, like even one 3 times taller than this, then that air will all escape and the flow will be better and the engine will be cooler. So I'm big on that kind of stuff. So this is a bit disappointing. I'll probably run, there's no point. This is a brand new motor, so it's critical that it stays cool the first 20 flights. So rather than waiting on doing some improvements to this, I'll do it before the maiden. If it was a broken motor off another plane, I would probably just fly it, and then, you know, after a couple flights of enjoying the plane and all the, you know, effort, then I would add the modification, you know, to keep it cool. But since this is a brand new engine, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do some mods to this baffling right off the bat, which I didn't have to do to any extreme flight plane. I just had to trim it and glue it. I didn't have to mod it, and I didn't have to do to the old foam Skywing that was deep, and I just had to trim it. So first thing of a plane that was very easy to put together, first thing that's, you know, not optimal, not well thought out, is you would like, you can pretty much see that's a pretty big gap. Yeah, so that's that little story. Let me say something else about the DA, the mufflers. The thing that's kept me from having any loose mufflers, where all the guys at the field for years always have loose mufflers, is Nordlocks. And I use them on the muffler bolts that hold down the mufflers, and they work really good. You know, I'll just use any RTV sealant. I can use no gaskets. I can use gaskets. I can use gaskets with sealant, and the no gaskets, of course, is with sealant. You know, so like 3 different ways I can do it, and it always doesn't leak. It never leaks, but I always have the Nordlock, trying to get that sideways, so you can see the Nordlock washers on there. Well, you know, some of the brands of mufflers, you're able to use a more standard size like this. I should put them both in my hand so you can see. You know, which has the same ID but a bigger OD, and so naturally it's going to work even better. But then it got to the mufflers I was using, they changed for the mufflers I was using, and then I was able to get the same ID but the smaller OD that you can see there, and get those to work. So not quite as much surface area, not quite as good as these, but still got the job done 100%. 100% of the time got the job done. And then they made another mod, and then you couldn't get these in anymore. Even these wouldn't work with the small OD. So another nice feature of these mufflers for this motor is that I can go back to Nordlocks. I was having to fight not having Nordlocks for a few months now, but and these will actually even take the full size OD. There's just a ton of room in there, so that's a big deal to me. Actually, I mean, it's not a do or die deal, but you know, I've always just enjoyed never having a leaking muffler, never having to do anything to muffler at the field, and never having a bunch of burnt on gas and oil on my mufflers, you know. So none of the above did I ever have to deal with. You know, it's set it and forget it. You know, I just all I do, it's no headache at all. I could do anything, but I just go no gasket, and I go Nordlocks, and I go RTV, and I just skim it on there with a popsicle stick. You know, even sort of liberally. Like, I don't try to make it thin. I don't try to do anything special. I don't wait for anything to set up or dry, and then I just bolt down the muffler on the fresh, wet RTV sealant, and I'll go fly right then. I'll go fly, you know, a minute after. I'll do it at the field and just go fly, and that's it. And never have them come off, even with the heat changes, you know, from a hot motor to a cold motor. Just, yeah, that's it. Done. Easy as pie. So I've always attributed that to the Nordlocks, and then lately I've been not able to use the Nordlocks on the latest mufflers that I was getting, so even the small OD, so now I'm able to use any Nordlock I want on these. So that was another nice surprise, you know, in working with this mufflers right now that I was checking out. So that's kind of everything. I was just like, wanted to give a heads up. These short videos, just about this little assembly stuff, I'll probably delete all these, you know, in the coming weeks and stuff. But just thought, things that I'm running into that I'd mention. Anybody that gets this plane, there's a few things like that that could be helpful. Like, well, you'll figure out that you have to mod these, but that you could, and you would have used these, and you would have probably drilled the bolt holes in too. But that was super quick and easy. What was the other thing? The Nord locks is good to know. And yeah, just since I'm doing it, make a quick video. But yeah, I probably won't stay up too long. Oh, and then I cut. That's the last thing. I knew there was something. I was stalling for time because I knew there was something. So I took and cut 3/8 of an inch off these. I think you could cut a quarter off and get it on and off pretty comfortably. It was a little tight stock, and I thought, well, they're pretty long on these mufflers from the DA, so pretty long stack. So I thought, you could take a quarter or 3/8 off without having any kind of problems. So I took 3/8 off, and you could see the little lines on it. This time, that's another little deal. This time I took a pipe cutter, plumbing pipe cutter, and I cut them, and it was easy to cut them with the pipe cutter, but it makes a polished mark where the sandblasting is now polished in a line on them. Not that you're going to care, after you flight a couple flights and everything, but, or even before that, even now, you won't care. But if you really want that ultimate clean factory look, then for me, it's still the Dremel with a cutoff wheel. Because I don't make any marks on them, and they look perfectly factory when I do that. But this is so easy to get straight, without having to take a belt sander and sand it flat or anything like that. Which actually I learned last time, that's a bad idea. So using a file, I guess, or anything. If you go with the Dremel way and you don't get it perfect, you might have to file it or something. So this gives you a very straight cut. With the pipe cutters, it just makes that line. But that was the last thing I want to say. For anybody that just magically happen to be assembling this plane, and it does come into play in a lot of planes, like you can get a lot of planes. It depends on the taper of the cowl, So you could get a lot of mufflers on stock mufflers, can mufflers like this. Not canister, but a can. You can get them on without cutting the muffler stacks. Like 19 times out of 20, I don't cut them. But once in a while, I'll cut, a little bit off. And if anybody has this plane and they want it super comfortable, a quarter to 3/8 is going to make your cowl go on super comfortable. I could even have cut smaller back slots because I cut 3/8 off. I don't think I needed a back slot at all, so little considerations for magically if somebody's watching this that's just getting started assembling one of these and it's just, OCD and running all this stuff through their head. That's about it. Yeah, this video definitely not going to stay up too long, but maybe a couple weeks just in case anybody's doing something like this. But yeah, this was so easy, I just had to mention it, and then you guys know me now 18 minutes later. I'm still talking. All right, out.